morning, and welcome again to the Breakfast Club at the Cordaville Hall. It's a beautiful day today, as it's always at Cordaville Hall, and we're here to have some breakfast. And I'm Bill Harrington.
And I'm Susan Keir.
And we are enjoying breakfast today, catered by the TJ's Pub and Restaurant in Ashland. They always bring us some wonderful food, and today is no exception. And following breakfast, we're going to have a speaker, and who would that speaker be, Sue?
Well, our speaker today is a husband and wife, Paul and Patrice Doucette. They're members of the Southborough Historical Society, and they're going to present the history of the Burnett family, a prominent Southborough family who founded Deerfoot Farms, a lot of you will be familiar with, and the Joseph Burnett Company. Joseph Burnett was a pharmacist who lived in Southborough, and he developed the vanilla extract that we all use today in cooking, became world famous, and this resulted in the founding of the Joseph Burnett Company of Boston in 1847. He bought land in Southborough, and that became Deerfoot Farms, very famous for dairy and pork products. So there's a lot of Southborough history we're going to look at today, and I think it'll be really interesting.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So let's hear about the Joseph Burnett family.
We'll see you later.
Joseph Burnett was born and lived most of his life in Southborough. Our story is about him and his family, their many accomplishments and contributions which have improved the lives of many down to this day. For these photos, we had to use a special portable camera. You can see that's me adjusting the lens. This is the home of Joseph Burnett's grandparents. When Charles Ripley Burnett married Lavina Matthews, the Matthews property on Gilmore Road passed to him. They had several children, including a son, Charles Ripley Jr., who was born in 1788. He was to become Joseph's father. Both men were rope makers by trade. No, you don't want to turn it yet. No. This is the home, the one on the below is the home of Charles and Kezia Horn Burnett, parents and the birthplace of Joseph Burnett. When Charles Jr. married Kezia Horn, they built a small house in 1815 on a plot of land west of the main house, given to them by their parents, Charles and Lavinia. It was in this small house that Joseph was born on November 11, 1820. Ironically, today it is known as the Warner Olin House. Warner Olin was a movie actor who played Detective Charlie Chan and who had spent his summers here. He's also buried in the cemetery on, I don't know what the name of that is. Cordaville Road, right. Joseph attended the local schools and at age 15 went to Worcester, where he attended Worcester College of Pharmacy. He studied medicine but never practiced it. However, he acquired the title of doctor, by which he was everywhere known. Back then, the study of medicine was rather primitive, and pharmacists knew nearly as much as medical doctors. Joseph's chemist job. In 1837, Joseph associated himself with the Boston druggist, Theodore Metcalf, as a clerk, later becoming a full partner in 1845 at age 25 of the newly named Metcalf and Burnett Chemical Company. He could now hang out his own shingle, and later he became owner of his own pharmacy, sharing the same address at 33 Tremont Road, Boston. This was later renamed Tremont Street. excuse me, 39 Tremont Road, where Joseph's Apothecary was located from 1853 to 1855. In 1853, the business was moved to 39 Tremont Road. Joseph remained here until 1855, when he formed his own company. The photo was from a later date showing Theodore Metcalf and Company as owners. This is the Burnett estate, or the Burnett main home. On June 20th, 1848, Joseph married Josephine Cutter and moved to the Great Stone Mansion in 1850, having lived in Boston residence of Theodore Metcalf. From top to bottom is the home as built with an A-frame, that's the photo at the top, roof, modified around 1860 with a mansard roof, the house in the middle, and enlarged with tower during the 1870s. Joseph and Josephine Burnett and their family also had several residences in Boston over the years, where they would live during the winter months. You can see the tower has been removed on the new house, and that'll show later. Can you all hear me? The Stone Shop and Carriage House. This is a picture of the Stone Shop and Carriage House below, which was partly hidden in the previous photo. I don't think it was in the previous, that was from another. The carriage house is below. The property, which has been sold, contains the stone house with 10,300 square feet of living area, including 11 bedrooms, 5.5 baths, and 3 outbuildings: the stone shop / chapel, carriage house, stables, and summer bungalow. It was priced at $1,150,000, but it sold for $860,000 in January 2012. It needs a lot of work, and the buyer will probably have to put at least this amount and probably a lot more to restore all of the buildings. You don't happen to have a Kleenex, do you? Let me see. This is the Burnett family. Yeah, excuse me. During their long marriage, Joseph and Josephine had 12 children. All but one, who died as an infant, can be seen in the photo. Back row, left to right, is Harry, these are the sons, John, Robert, Josephine Kidder, Edward, Reverend Waldo, and Charles. Front row, left to right, Louise, who became a choate, Esther, who became a gardener, Joseph was the father, Eleanor Bishop, she became a bishop, not a real bishop, but her married. Josephine Cutter, who was the mother, and Ruth. Ruth later became a nun. Joseph Burnett proposed and helped build the new St. Mark's Church, which was consecrated in 1863, and he became its senior warden. The Burnett girls received their elementary education from second cousins Harriet Marcella Burnett and her sister Elise Bell Burnett, Fay. They were daughters of Joel Burnett, Joseph's uncle. In 1866, they established a day school, the Fay School for boys and girls. The school is still in operation today. The Burnett boys attended St. Mark's School, which Joseph had founded in 1865. In fact, Edward was sent back from St. Paul's School, which he was attending, so he could graduate from St. Mark's, his father's new school. Now this is Dr. Morton. This is an interesting thing about him. Dr. William Thomas Green Morton, a Boston dentist, was experimenting with the use of ether as an anesthetic at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. He had poor results and realized that the ether he was using was impure. Another doctor, Charles T. Jackson, told him to buy all of his drugs from Joseph Burnett to ensure their purity. Dr. Morton bought his ether exclusively from Joseph Burnett and performed the first public demonstration of painless surgery on October 16, 1846. The exclusive use of the drugs from such an eminent testifies to Joseph Burnett's reputation. So he's actually connected with the first anesthesia. Joseph Burnett develops the first vanilla extract. In 1847, a prominent lady who was the wife of wealthy Boston manufacturer and who had lived some years in France entered the store of Joseph Burnett. He was still a partner with Theodore Metcalf at the time. She said she was very anxious to procure a vanilla flavor for her creams, sauces, and desserts, such as he had been getting in Paris. Mr. Burnett listened to the lady's description of the flavoring she wanted. He busied himself in the laboratory, and after long, careful experiments, when he was satisfied with its quality, he made the first vanilla extract. The lady was so pleased, she urged him to make more. This started him on his way to international fame, and it was the beginning of vanilla and other flavoring extracts in the U.S. and worldwide. Excuse me. The Joseph Burnett Company is established. Excuse me. Joseph Burnett from the 18 is now. This you're going to go to the next one. No. Yeah. This is a vintage photograph of Joseph Burnett from the 1850s, around the time he started his extract business. One of the granddaughters called him Glamour Gramps, a fact to which this photo testifies. In 1855, he sold off one half of his partnership in the Metcalf and Burnett Chemical Company for a tidy sum. He soon saw that if one extract flavor made business good, additional flavors would make business even better. By 1857, the business expanded rapidly, and Joseph decided to move to a larger facility, a rented factory at 27 Central Street, Boston. In the same year, William G. Edmonds became a partner, and the company was now known as Joseph Burnett and Company. Soon his products were sold not only in the United States, but all over the world as well. At the time of the move to Central Street, the company produced 12 different extracts. They also produced and sold wood violet perfume, cologne, cocaine for the hair, which he invented in 1857 and sold for over 40 years, Floramel, a perfume for the handkerchief, Calistin for a healthy skin and complexion, Jamaica ginger for the stomach, Oriental tooth wash, cod liver oil, Jonas Whitcomb's asthma remedy, and several other personal and medical products. In 1894, a new rented factory was opened at 36, no, that's not the right picture. Yeah, at 36 India Street, Boston. About the time the increasing interest in fancy cooking warranted the marketing of a pure color for coloring candies, frostings, etc. After extensive experimenting in the laboratory and kitchen, Burnett's color pastes were out on the market. That's it, yeah. This is a picture of from the Boston Food Exposition of 1891. At this and other expositions, a variety of their products were displayed. The Joseph Burnett Company was incorporated in 1895. According to magazine ads for their products, it appears an office was opened in Chicago circa 1891 to 1900. And there was also one at 592 Broadway in New York, mentioned from an ad from 1868. There were agents for the company throughout the United States and other parts of the world. In 1894, Joseph Burnett died from injuries after he was thrown from his carriage when his horse was spooked by a trolley on Maple Street in Marlborough. He who had been so innovative in modern methods became a victim of modern technology. This is John T. Burnett. After Joseph Burnett's death, his son Robert served as interim president, and he also served in this capacity at Deerfoot Farm Company at the same time, until his brother John T. Burnett became president of the company in 1907. Another brother, Harry, was treasurer. Joseph's death, the increasing popularity of flavoring extracts in food coloring, and the enactment of the stricter Pure Food and Drug laws in 1906 motivated the company to concentrate on its food products. Some medical and personnel type products, however, continued to be produced until around 1920. In 1919, after a careful market analysis, it was decided that fine spices could be handled to advantage, and so Burnett spices, the choicest grown in the tropics, were added to the extract line. 437 to 447 D Street in South Boston was opened in 1922. It had gradually outgrown its 36 India Street facility and moved to this new factory. Currently, the building is beautifully restored, looking much as it did in 1922. At the end of the program, I have before and after pictures of everything, so you can see. These are what are called encased postals. They're very rare. A very interesting and unusual method of advertising was devised by John Galt, a Boston businessman, who had submitted a design patent granted on August 12, 1862, for a postage stamp case made of brass with a mica front into which a postage stamp could be installed. Used as currency, these encased stamps became popular for a few months, only as the post office department later refused to sell Mr. Galt the necessary stamps. They felt he was competing with their postal cards, which are also used as currency. This seems strange, at least to me anyway, as it was a win-win situation for the Postal Service, as they would have had to supply the stamps for these encased postals. The encased postal stamps were used by 35 companies, including the Joseph Burnett Company, who saw this as a unique way to advertise. Its name and products on the back would circulate as the currency changed hands. The coins were issued in denominations of 1, 3, 5, 10, 12, 24, 30, and 90 cents. All were very scarce today as they were used for such a short time. The pictures show two examples of Burnett postals, one which advertised their personal and medical products, while the other promoted their food-enhancing products. Can you see the names on them? Yeah, okay. That's nice and big. Okay. Yeah. These are proprietary stamps, or tax revenue stamps. The stamp date from a 21-year period, 1862 to 1883, during and after the Civil War, when special taxes were levied by Congress on matches, proprietary medicines, perfumes, and playing cards. The manufacturers of those goods were allowed to design their own stamps and to have their own dies and plates made. The act was briefly revised and immediately after the Spanish-American War, which was 1898 into 1900. The Burnett Company, however, continued to use these stamps after the tax ended. You can see Burnett's personally designed tax stamp at the top. One has the tax amount imprinted on it, and the other is blank.
and it is an example of a stamp used by them after the taxes ended. The bottom stamps are examples of the standard government issue tax stamps. They are in denominations of 3, 4, and 5 cents. Stamped on the face of the bottom 3-cent stamp, which is the most clearly seen imprint, is J. Burnett and Company, March 9th, 1877, Boston. Cocoa-Wayne, I pronounce it that way for a reason. Cocoa-Wayne slide. This was the company's most prominent pharmaceutical, personal, and medical product. The Cocoa-Wayne bottle has its original label. It was found in the walls of an old home. People back then used all sorts of items for insulating their homes: corn cobs, newspapers, bottles, and so on. And why it is in such good condition. The ad above is from the 1890s. Contrary to what its name implies, it did not contain cocaine, but rather coconut oil, thus the spelling C-O-C-O-A-I-N-E. This was not a marketing device to benefit from the popularity of cocaine in various elixirs, as Burnett's Cocoa-Wayne was on the market several years before products containing cocaine became popular. Those were the good old days when you could buy your drugs right off the shelf. The headache went away fast. They would cure anything. Now, this is a collage of Joseph Burnett products. During the 1920s to the 1940s, the Burnett Company added mint jelly, marshmallow, instant puddings of chocolate, butterscotch, and of course vanilla, a liquid mix for making ice cream and sherbet, a ready mix powder for making ice cream, a pie crust mix, a muffin mix, and liquid food coloring. Many different flavors and colors were also added to the extracts, food coloring, and paste products. This one is just a brief picture. It's a country display of some of the Burnett flavorings and spices here. Okay. These are the varieties of flavoring, extracts, and color liquids from the 40s. At the time, the Burnett featured 29 extract flavors and 7 food colors. So far, we have found a total of 37 flavors produced by them over the years. Some had been discontinued by this time. John T. died in 1929, and Henry P. Kidder, who lived from 1895 to 1975, who happened to be the son of Josephine, daughter of Joseph and Josephine Burnett, became the Burnett Company's president. Harry died in 1927, and George H. Burnett, who lived from 1884 to 1951, who was the son of Robert, became treasurer. Both served in these capacities until at least 1946, when the company was sold to American Home Products Incorporated, a subsidiary of American Home Products Corporation, now known as Wyatt. Okay. Wyatt. Wyatt. W-Y-E-T. Make sure I get it right. W-Y-E-T-H. I should speak. Everybody still hear me? I'm not if I'm speaking into this. According to Find Owner Search on the web, the last ownership of the Burnett products was by the Doxsee, D-O-X-S-E-E Food Corporation, which stopped producing them at an unknown date. We know the Burnett name continued in use until at least the 1960s for magazine ads. Doxsee Food Corporation in turn was absorbed by other corporations. Okay. This is the, what does it say at the bottom?
For more on the history of Joseph Burnett.
Huh?
For more on the history of Joseph Burnett.
Okay. Can you read the bottom of that? Okay, good. You see the
Plug for the Historical Society.
that's a plug for the Historical Society, right? But I'm doing this for the Historical Society. Okay. Now the Deerfoot Farm story. Okay. Joseph Burnett founded Deerfoot Farm in Southborough in 1847 by combining the acreage of two existing farms. Legend has it that centuries ago, lava flowed through the area, destroying all in its path. Animals fled, and a deer left its hoofprint in stone. This stone was found by Joseph Burnett. Some accounts say it was found by his son Edward in the brook by his home. Today it is located under a large tree next to Joseph and Josephine's gravesite, which is in St. Mark's Cemetery. Yeah. In 1870, pork products began to be produced on a commercial basis. Prior to this time, Joseph Burnett created his tasty sausage and shared it with family and friends. Its fame spread, and it was decided to market it to the general public. This was the start of the famous sausage and other pork products operation. That's better, I think. In 1871, Edward Burnett, who's pictured here, became Deerfoot president. 1 year later, in 1872, Deerfoot produced products were offered to the Boston market. Edward Burnett also served one term as a representative in Congress for Massachusetts from 1886 to 1888. President Grover Cleveland visited and also used Deerfoot Farm as his campaign headquarters in the area. Okay. Deerfoot became the first dairy to use a centrifugal cream separator commercially in 1879. The system was based on a centrifugal separator patented in 1868 by D.M. Weston of Boston. This made Deerfoot, in effect, an experimental dairy. The D.M. Weston cream separator was on exhibit at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington for many years. It is still in their collection. Around 1880, Deerfoot began bottling its milk. We know that Deerfoot packaged in glass at least by 1879. This is early considering the first patented milk bottle, a Leicester jar, was in 1878. Most dairies, including Deerfoot, used fruit jars or product jars before adopting a regulation milk bottle, and in many cases, before they were available. Most of Deerfoot's milk went to Boston in glass, being shipped in their own railroad cars at night. The milk was delivered to customers between 5 and 2 o'clock in the morning.
10.
Oh, and 10, I'm sorry. 5 and 10 o'clock in the morning. Deerfoot, as it did in later years, had two sources of supply for their milk: the home herd and neighboring farms. At this time, they bought from about 20 farms in this area. Cream was also produced by several creameries operated by Deerfoot in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, which was shipped daily to Southborough by rail. Okay. The cream found two outlets for market, the cream from their milk, as fresh cream or let me see, was transferred to the churn in the refrigerated room for the making of butter. The butter room is pictured at two different dates, 1912 and 1917. You can see the butter churn in the back of the room, which appears virtually unchanged in 5 years. Top-grade Jersey butter was offered to a select customer and was priced higher than ordinary butter. In fact, the Parker House's famous rolls were said to be made perfect by butter from Deerfoot. In April of 1883, Edward Burnett imported 6 Guernsey cattle from the island of Guernsey, England, making him an early breeder of the type in the United States. By the 1890s, Deerfoot had 12 Guernsey bulls and 110 Guernsey cows. The picture shows 2 prize Guernseys. The one on the bottom photo is a Deerfoot Farm beauty. I don't know, do you know where the islands of Jersey and Guernsey? They're actually off the coast of France, but they're part of England. And it was the only part of England that was occupied by the Germans in World War II. This is, this is Robert Burnett. Edward had left Deerfoot around 1892 to pursue his interest in farm architecture and cattle raising for wealthy country gentlemen. Robert became acting president in 1888 when Edward became a state representative, and its president in 1892 when Edward opened an office in New York City. One of the most famous projects that Edward did was the Vanderbilt's Biltmore Farm in North Carolina. That's that home down there that's the largest home in I think, North America or all of the Americas. The beautiful home belonging to Robert Burnett, which had been owned by his brother Edward, is shown at top. There was also a large stable near the home, which later served as its private residence, and that's in the middle there. The bottom photo is of the garage built by Robert Burnett for the family automobile in the late teens or early 20s. Now, those 2 buildings, the 2 bottom are still there, but the home is gone. Unfortunately, that was a beautiful home. Okay. This is this picture is of James Russell Lowell, who lived at Deerfoot Farm. Let me see if I see this here. He was the father-in-law of Edward Burnett, and so he moved there in, what year was it on the thing, 1888? 1886, and lived there until 1891 when he moved back to Cambridge, the year he had died. Okay. Not long after he became president, Robert faced Deerfoot's most serious crisis. For the creation of a reservoir system to help supply the city of Boston with water, 2,000 acres of the town's farmland was proposed to be taken. During the late 1800s, and all the ice used by the dairy was obtained from Parker's Pond near Sawin's gristmill, just across Deerfoot Road from the farm buildings. In January and February, when the ice was 9 to 10 inches thick, men would cut it into blocks with saws and send it down the Stony Brook to the ice house, where it would be stored in straw. The photos show how the dam looked around 1900 and how it looks today. Behind the dam is what once was called Parker's Pond. In later years, water from Crystal Pond across Route 9 supplied most of both Big and Little Deerfoot's, I'll explain them later, needs, while artesian wells supplied the water used at the sausage plant and dairy on Newton Street. This is a map showing the land taken by the state, which is the rickrack lines. Large parcels of land for the construction of the Sudbury Reservoir were to be taken by eminent domain in 1894, as I said. The takeover was to include virtually the entire Deerfoot Farm property. Robert Burnett successfully fought this in court and reduced its takeover to only 20 acres of choice pasture. This is significant because Deerfoot's payroll represented over 1/2 the wages paid in the entire township. so employment for many of Southborough's residents was saved. The striped areas, as mentioned, represent the Deerfoot Farm and adjacent properties finally taken by the state. Okay. The barn and farm buildings in the boarding house for unmarried workers in this picture. The barns and farm buildings on the south side of Stony Brook, because of the impurities from the runoff, were included in the takeover and had to be removed. The large stone mansion and shop on the north side of Stony Brook remained, and those farm buildings included the boarding house below. These are 2 farm cottages for married workers. They appear to be the same, but are actually 2 different houses in the same style. They were located across Parkerville Road, which is now filled with water. They were removed. Okay. The meat processing or sausage plant and dairy operation moved across town to Newton Street, which had access to the railroad, so products and supplies could be shipped in and out. Besides sausages, bacon, ham, frankfurter's lard, and other varieties of pork products were produced. The photos show both the dairy on the left with the horses and wagons in front and the sausage plant. This is when, right around the time it opened, 1897. Big Deerfoot is born. The map shows the new buildings after the reservoir was built. You can see, can you notice on the map the barns at Big Deerfoot? And
You can point with the mouse ball.
what marker?
With the mouse.
Where is it?
Right there.
Oh, okay. I can see it. Ooh. 70, your eyes go. They were okay yesterday. Yeah. This right here, can you see the arrow? Huh?
Oh, it doesn't show on the screen.
It doesn't show? Okay. Okay. That built
bottom.
at the bottom, that's the lodge. That's what we call Big Deerfoot, the huge barns and cow sheds. Across the way here are the 4 farmhouses, 3 of which still exist. 1 burned. The Workers' Lodge, you'll see pictures of these later. The Workers' Lodge was in here, and this is the Joseph Burnett estate, and this is where Robert and Edward lived, and the stables is in here as well. I don't think the sausage plant no, it doesn't show on this map. Does it show below? Okay. Okay. Okay, let's see. In 1897, new and larger farm buildings were opened. The Great Barn on Deerfoot Road, which is called Big Deerfoot, was occupied along with the stables, boarding house or lodge for farm workers, and the farmhouses for married employees. The farm superintendent lived in the lodge with the family. The stable later became a milk depot used to facilitate the movement of the milk when the dairy relocated. Now, in top you can see the great barns and the cow sheds. In the bottom on the left is that the stables that became a milk depot, and it's now a home. And on the right is the lodge, which is gone. It burned twice, and finally they took it down. Okay. Attached to the barn were 2 long wings, each one giving stable room to 75 cows. The arrangement had the double advantage of preserving the cows' feed and also did away with hay overhead, which shut off pure air. For sanitary purposes, waste and debris from inside the sheds were swept into an area underneath, where it would later be used for fertilizer or carried away for disposal. Below are pictured the inside of the wings, or cow sheds, with the cows in their stalls. Not long after they were built, and at a later time, when the roof rafters were covered and other improvements made to the sheds. These cow sheds were the first of their type in the country. The huge barn and sheds were inspected by dairy authorities from all parts of the United States, and the sanitary building plans became the model for practically all other modern dairy barns. It is likely Edward Burnett was involved in this design, as farm architecture was his specialty. It's funny on this, I've never seen anything written that he did, but I'm sure he must have been responsible for these. Okay. This is a pair of lucky residents who cleverly seem to have to show up when the milking time. That isn't actually a Deerfoot, that's a generic picture of it. It certainly happened at Deerfoot. Okay. This, in 1893, Deerfoot began acquiring acreage that would eventually become known as Little Deerfoot. By 1910, this land stretched nearly 2/3 of a mile on both sides of the Boston-Worcester Turnpike, Route 9, and spread into Westboro. Little Deerfoot was where the young stock were raised and kept before being brought to the new large barns on Deerfoot Road, Big Deerfoot, when ready for milking. Today, Little Deerfoot's farm acreage, including where the barn once stood, contains several business parks located on the south side of Route 9. And where the farmhouse with stables had been on the opposite side of Route 9, the north side of Route 9, the Red Roof Inn and a gas station now stand just east of the I-495 interchange. Sad, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. The top photo from the late 1940s. Oh, by the way, on that Little Deerfoot I hadn't mentioned here, they used to have a tunnel under Route 9 where the cows could cross from the one side, because there were pastures behind the house. They could cross from the farm to those pastures without worrying about traffic, even though it probably wasn't as bad then. The top photo from the late 1940s shows the 4 farm cottages as they originally looked. 3 of the cottages remain to this day. The 4th, nearest the car in the front photo, burned and was replaced by a newer home. The bottom photo shows how the dairy appeared around the time it was opened on Newton Street. It would eventually grow into a much larger operation and bigger dairy plant. And of course, the sausage plant is next to it. Okay. This is the in-bottle pasteurization process in 1913. Deerfoot began pasteurizing milk inside the bottle on August 1st, 1911, and continued this practice until the dairy relocated to Newton, Mass. Now that seems funny. They were on Newton Street and then they moved to Newton, Mass. But in 1947. This is a process utilized by very few dairies, and Deerfoot was the most outstanding example. These methods and high standards contributed to the higher cost of their milk, and giving it the appellation of the aristocrat of milk, by which it became universally known. Milk pasteurized by the conventional method was also available under the Crystal Spring Farm label about this time. Deerfoot was buying milk, at this time, Deerfoot was buying milk from 129 local area farms. If you find a Crystal Spring Farm bottle, that was basically a label for the milk pasteurized outside the bottle. Some people didn't want it in the bottle for some reason, pasteurized inside. Okay, I think I explained it further here. The in-bottle pasteurization process in the 1930s. By the 1930s, the process became more mechanized, utilizing a trolley-like device onto which filled bottles were loaded and lifted to an upper floor and immersed in a heated brine solution. The milk's temperature was gradually raised until pasteurization occurred at 145 degrees Fahrenheit. The filled bottles were then gradually cooled and lowered to the packing room to be placed in wooden cases and delivered to their customers. And this was a gradual process, gradually heating up and then gradually cooling off, automatically. For the process, a special bottle was required with a heavy metal cap to seal the contents from impurities. During pasteurization and to withstand being submerged during the process, an expansion chamber was added to the top of the bottle and the raw milk filled up to the fill point, indicated by the white arrow. In 1929, Robert Burnett died. This same year, General Ice Cream Corporation, Division of National Dairy Products, or Sealtest, purchased Deerfoot. The two events were apparently unrelated, as Robert had planned the sale prior to his death. The Great Barn and the other Deerfoot buildings were painted white sometime after their acquisition by General Ice Cream Corp. The farm buildings had been painted red during the Burnett's ownership. Photos top to bottom from the 30s showing from the 30s, the middle in the 40s, and the last from 1960 after closing. Note the addition and later removal of the silos. On October 7, 1933, Admiral Richard E. Byrd asked for 3 Guernsey cows to go with him to the South Pole in order that they might have fresh milk. Excuse me. Newton, Mass. Okay. In 1947, the dairy was moved to Newton, Mass. The sausage plant expanded to include the former dairy building, and the farm remained in Southborough. The pork processing business was sold to High Grade Foods by General Ice Cream. It remained as Deerfoot Farms Company, division of High Grade, until it was sold in 1969. In 1960, actually December 31st, 1959, at midnight, the dairy operation closed. The dairy routes were sold to United Farmers Dairy Co-op, and the property was put up for sale. Workers from the Newton Dairy were relocated to the Sealtest plant, and I understand they went to Cambridge as well. Let me see, wait a minute now. And that Sealtest Dairy plant was off Route 30 in Framingham, which is currently owned by Kraft Foods. Deerfoot Farms Company ended in 1969 with the sale of the meat processing facilities to Idlewild Farms, L.B. Darling Company. They had, however, used the Deerfoot Farm name on their products for a very brief time until 1970. The sausage plant has been razed, and the Southborough Medical Center has replaced it. Deerfoot also had stores and offices, plus warehouses and milk depot in Boston and New York City. They also owned and operated a farm in Bolton, one in the Wellesley Farms section of Weston, which they leased, and creameries in Northborough, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Northborough, Mass., Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. You see, number 1 is the Great Barn, or Big Deerfoot Barn, and the cow sheds. Number 2 are the farm workers' cottages that were left. Number 3, the former stables and milk depot. That's owned by Dr. Bartolini and his wife. Number 4, single workers' boarding house and lodge. That was where it was located. You can see the kind of foundation mark. It was gone then. The property has been sold in this 1964 aerial photograph, and new homes and roads can be seen.
Is that Route 9 going across too?
No, that's Deerfoot Road. Yeah. Yeah. That's where the Trotter School is today. The main barn, yeah.
You've got more.
Yeah, I know. This is 5. Number 5 is the Stone House Mansion. That's still here, Joseph Burnett. It's not very clear in the photo. Number 6 are the 3 outbuildings, the stable, carriage house, the stone shop, chapel, and summer bungalow. You realize the stone shop, I did mention that it was called the stone shop because they cut the stone, which they got in this town, for the house, the home. And then after that was built, it was turned into the St. Mark's Chapel for a short time until St. Mark's was built. And then after that, the farm manager lived there for a short time. Yes, that's that building you see falling apart right on Deerfoot Road, right on the side by the water. Yeah. I'm told it had a water wheel at one time. Okay. Yeah. Now this is Little Deerfoot. You can see the barn and other farm buildings, which is number 9, and that's where today I think EMC and a few other businesses are. And number 10 are the farmhouse and stable across Route 9 on the corner of Flag Road, next to where Red Roof Inn and in the gas station are. There was I did say that. In this I say there's a tunnel under Route 9 which allowed the cows to safely cross. The Little Deerfoot property extended to Crystal Pond, which is next to near Deerfoot Road, and along Flag Road. Number 11 is the sausage plant and dairy from the air. And number 12 is the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad tracks behind the plant where they could ship things in and out. And number 13, just out of the picture, is St. Mark's School property. The school is just out of the photo. Yep. Okay. Now these are photos of 2 vehicles that they had used. Believe it or not, the photo on the top is older than the one on the bottom. The vehicle is a white, it's a white truck. It's from 1918. The brand is white. And the bottom photo was taken sometime in the 20s or even 30s of a Deerfoot milk wagon. I can tell probably the 30s from the bottle that's pictured on it. Yeah. You know, after the war, they brought the milk wagons back on the road for a while because, or during the war, I should say, because there was a shortage of rubber and gasoline, and also they brought the wagons back. I can still remember some when I was a kid. They were on the road probably until sometime in the 40s, late 40s. And this is a drawing of a milk delivery truck that happened to be made from an old New York City cab, I was told. And the bottom one are tandem trucks which they shipped their product to Boston in. And that's a Sterling truck, one of the Deerfoot's delivery trucks. And down below is a Diffco milk truck, pictured in 1953. Diffco's the most famous name.
What's the most famous name? What is the most famous name?
Diffco, for milk trucks. Oh. It means it's Detroit Industrial Vehicle Company. It's a, what do you call it? What do they call it? Acronym, yeah. Yeah. Now, what's that say?
It's the cameraman.
Yeah. This is the cameraman. Now, this is he's got to take pictures for me before and after. You have to use a big camera for that. Okay. You see in this picture, the top picture is probably not that old, but that I have as a before and after picture of the original house that Joseph Burnett's grandparents had owned on Gilmore Street. And this is before and after the home that Joseph was born in, that his parents owned. And this is the home that Warner Oland had lived in. Now in Boston, this is where the pharmacy was located, and that's in the Scully Square area above. And this is what it's like today. It's all been changed. This is What is that?
27 Central Street.
Yeah. The top buildings are not central. I don't have a picture of it, but it was similar to that. And this is where the building in the back there, that huge skyscraper in the back, was where his business was located on Central Street in Boston. Now right here is 36 India Street. Can you see, can you point the little arrow right here? Yeah. Does it say 36? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see the building there. And then down below is the location of where it was. It's not there anymore. Part of it, the Southeast Expressway cut off part of it there. But that's what's left today. And across that is the old Grain Exchange building in Boston. And this, it hasn't changed. This is the building in South Boston. Today they are condominiums. The farm building itself, and what's there today is the Trotter School. And not a very good picture of the old stables, but today that's the home of the Bartolinis. The Workers' Lodge, and below it's gone. The farmhouses, which are still there except for one of them. And this little Deerfoot before and after. You probably recognize all these spots, is that correct? Could you find them if you had to look for where they were? And this is the farmhouse for Little Deerfoot, and down below is what is there now. The sausage plant and dairy, and it's the medical center now. And the Newton, Mass plant, which still looks like it did, but now at least when I was there the last time, it belonged to Papagino's. Oh, what a shame. The top building is so beautiful. It looks like a, what's his name there? The Framingham.
Wallace Nutting.
Wallace Nutting. It looks like a Wallace Nutting print on top. And that's what the reservoir looked like when it was taken back in 1900. And the stone house then and the stone house now. And this is the carriage house back in the 30s, and this is the carriage house today. Yeah. And that summer home, the little summer bungalow, was dragged over to behind the carriage house, and this is what it looks like on the bottom today. I hope they can restore that. The stone chapel, then and now. And this is a beautiful home of Robert and Edward Burnett, gone, and there's another beautiful home in its place. And the stables for that home are still there, and then you can see what they originally looked like and what they look like now. And the garage, they put an addition on that garage. I think the owner is also trying to put the tower back on the stables. This is their location on, what street is that?
Hancock Place.
Hancock Street in Boston. They're on the lower left there. And this is what it's like today. And this is the location of, what is that?
Bromfield.
That's on Bromfield Street. They're at the very end there, and this is today what is there. Yeah. Yeah.
Bosworth.
Now you see here on Bosworth Street, they were on the left where that famous gate is. And today, there's a high-rise condominium there. Some of them are $1 million apartments. You people can afford them from Southborough, but we poor Mendon people can't afford them. This is the Burnett factory. See where the little red X is there? I think that show. No, I'm sorry. That's not Burnett. That's the. What is that? That's the Deer. Oh, yeah. That's the Deerfoot building on 132 Central Street. Before they put the expressway in, this building along here, and down below you can see they sliced the end right off it to make the Southeast Expressway. So that was lost with that. They had a store on what was that, Tremont Street? And today in the spot, you can see the store on the right side on the left picture. And today those are high-rise, multi-million-dollar apartments. Yeah, and there's Mr. Pig saying goodbye.
It's fascinating, especially for me not growing up in town, to hear about the history. And you know, Bill, this was one of our best attended breakfasts. We had the most people for this presentation today that we've had.
I guess people like and enjoy historical type of programs.
I think so, and when we start up again in the fall, I would encourage any of you historians out there, if you'd like to come and present and talk about Southborough history, if it's something that you know a lot about, please get in touch with the Senior Centre and let us know.
Yeah, boy, that'd be a good idea. But today, I was really surprised that not only was he a chemist, but he also was very interested in the, I guess you'd call it the infrastructure of Southborough. He started Fay School. He started St. Mark's School, St. Mark's Church. And you probably, if you've gone up and down Main Street, West Main Street, you've seen that stone mansion on the left-hand side as you're moving west. And that was his home.
It's where he lived.
Yeah, that really surprised me. And there's also 3 cottages left in this town that are still here that were part of his estate.
And they were part of the farm, weren't they?
Yeah.
I think the farm was of a lot of interest to many people who attended today. There was actually a couple of people in the audience, one of them who worked there.
For 46 years she worked there.
Wasn't that something?
Yes.
It's wonderful to hear those personal stories.
Yeah.
And they delivered milk door to door in glass milk bottles, just like I'm used to receiving when I lived in England, and still happens there. But it was fun to hear that it happened in the US also. And they shipped it by rail to Maine and Vermont, so it went everywhere. And the Parker House in Boston actually used their butter, and that's what really put them on the map.
Yeah.
Very famous.
Yeah. All these facts, you just never really thought about that. So it was,
I know, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And especially for me, the fact that they had imported Jersey cattle from the UK, from the island of Jersey and another island called Guernsey, which is off the coast of France. And they're just small islands. And I didn't even know this, but he told us that they were the only parts of the UK to be occupied during World War II. The Germans actually occupied those islands, so that was really fascinating.
Well, speaking of islands, I guess it was interesting that they took one of those Jersey cows down to Antarctica when they did an expedition down there.
Oh, that's right. They shipped the cows.
Yeah, would you believe?
And they made it back too, which is even better to hear.
So all of you people that missed this breakfast this morning, just think of in the fall when we come back. We're off for the summer now, but we'll be starting breakfast clubs again in the fall, and it would be beneficial to you all to come and see some of these programs that we have, because they are very, very interesting, very fascinating. A lot of little facts that you never knew. So we're about to call the season over, but the Senior Center will be open all summer, and there's all kinds of activities still going on here. And feel free to drop in if you have issues with your family, We have Cindy here on outreach. She's here to help you if you have any issues, and of course, Cindy. Leslie's here, our nurse, and if you have health issues, she's always available. So don't forget the senior center through the summer, and we'll be looking forward to some more breakfast in the fall.
Yep, so we'll see you back here in November. So until then, you have a great summer.
Yep, there's lots going on behind the white picket fence here on Cordaville Road, and the latch string is always out.